just started knocking on the door of A-Ride the year before, and now she hadn't been on her bike for 9 months, and I'm in rehab. How am I ever going to do this? And I said to her, I have an idea. We'll do a little short ride the first week, and then the next week we'll do a little bit longer ride, and we'll pick up the pace a little bit. And then the week after that, we'll do another ride. And you know what? Maybe there's some people in the bike club who might have an interest in joining us. Maybe perhaps there might be some B riders in the club who would like to learn how to become A riders. And perhaps the SIG can demystify this A ride animal A ride culture.
Right.
And we put a listing in the bulletin, and we called it a special interest group because we felt that this was sort of off to the side. A riders were very different, and there was walls up, and you want to barge in, good luck to you. So we called it a special interest group, and sure enough, on the first Saturday in March, 50 or 60 people showed up at the boathouse, and I went, oh my goodness. And we set this program up to be 17 weeks long. Because I wanted Jody to take it nice and easy on her knee.
I did it in June or something.
And July.
July.
And the goal of the SIG at that time was to ride on the regularly scheduled Club A ride when we graduate. So I kind of rigged it, not in a bad way. I rigged it and had Chris Mailing. I asked him if he would be so kind as to lead this ride. And, it's a real A-ride. You got to lead a real A-ride. And he mapped out a ride. It was about 125 miles. It was heroic and monstrous. And the whole club was looking at us throughout this whole series is that they're never going to figure out how to do this. They're never going to do this. And we just kept saying, no, we're going to. They're all thinking, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to do this. And I remember in particular at one point, it was the ride out to Montauk Point. And all the A riders were making fun of us that, oh, you're never going to make it to Montauk Point. It's too far. You don't know how to ride pace lines. You're never going to do this. You're just a bunch of wannabes. And we just kind of motored along, and we were just riding in a great pace line out to Montauk. And we went through East Hampton. And the A riders were taking a break.
There they were sitting there.
And all of a sudden they looked up, and here we came flying through East Hampton. They'd been there for a while, and it was like they threw their sandwiches down and their sodas down and their coffees down, and it was like in one of those silent movies where people were scampering around and they grabbed their bikes. Oh my gosh, you can't let these people be on. And they got on their bike and kill themselves to make sure that they did not come in behind us at Montauk. And they got to Montauk, 30 seconds before us or something like that. And it was sort of a coronation that we had arrived. We are. You're full of baloney. We can be A riders, and in fact, we are A riders. And that's how the SIG started.
The way it is now, it is so organized. The mentorship program, the skills each week. It's just whatever. Looking back on it, that first ride was funky.
Yeah.
We had 8 graduates, Barbara Levitan, Larry Nelson.
Eileen O'Neill.
Yeah.
You. Holly Gray.
Yes, Holly Gray. Boy, she became a great climber. It was supposed to be a one-shot deal. Yeah. That was the other thing. I mean, it was for that. And people would say, well, you can do this next year. And Chrissy said, no, this isn't something, this isn't a part of the club. We just did this. But there were so many people interested that it happened the next year, and then it happened the next year, and it became a program. This year we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the SIG.
I'll tell you that I think that to now the biggest contribution that I have had on the SIG since those early days, since getting it off the ground, was this insistence and sort of badgering the captains of the SIG after a couple of years to find another captain, so that it doesn't get stale and boy, that has turned out to be such a wonderful aspect of it. The SIG has a mentor program now that's relatively new, 4 or 5 years old. There's a program week by week, what they do, what we're going to accomplish each week. And each new person, each new leader has a new idea Some ideas are horrible and they don't go anyplace. Other ideas are absolutely wonderful and they leave a lasting impact on the SIGs.
When Christy started the SIG, about a year or two later, I became an A-SIG leader. And when Ed Fishkin started the A-19, I was one of the first A-19 SIG leaders.
And we started developing a cadre of co-leaders. And if memory serves me, it was the 4th year that when I said that, you know, my ideas are already 3 years later, they're old and they're stale. I'm not bringing anything fresh and new to this. We need a new captain who has a different perspective. And Lance Leaner, if that name has come up, became the captain of the SIG. And the first thing Lance Leaner said was, why are you doing this for 17 weeks? We can do everything we need to do and become A-riders in 11 weeks. And it was just such an astounding idea to me. I said, oh, wow, I never thought of that. Which is just an indication of how new thoughts, new ideas always bring freshness and dynamics to anything that's going on.
I signed up for the A-SIG. I didn't know what I was getting into. It was challenging. I remember the ride leaders. Christy Gazzetta, who actually founded the A-SIG, was one of the ride leaders, and he was very strong. And then there were other leaders like Ed Fishkin, who was more laid back. And we didn't know which ride leader we would get each week. So they'd have the participants, us, count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you didn't know if you were number 3 who your ride leader would be, because they wanted to keep it random every week. And I was like hiding. Oh, I hope I don't have Christy. He's so fast. And I did have Christy one week, and he was great. I remember he gave me some really good pointers. I had Ed Fishkin another week, which was just terrific. It was probably one of the last weeks. And at that point, it was such a wonderful experience because the other groups were all ahead of us. There was Christy, and I don't really remember everybody. I know there was Keith Goldstein, Mary Allen, a number of other leaders. And Ed Fishkin was my leader that day. And we would basically pick up people that were not able to keep up with the groups in front of us, the faster groups. And as we saw someone on the road and we kind of reeled them in, we'd all go, hip hip hooray, welcome to our group, hip hip hooray. And it was just so much fun. And so we had a little band of people, and when we stopped at the deli, Ed Fishkin, being a doctor, of course, he knows the healthy things to pick out to eat. So he got a couple Hostess Twinkies and a few other delicious cupcake things, which I don't know what they were, but they were quite overwhelming. And he would eat those, and then he would lay back on the lawn. And I remember he actually took a nap. And we didn't want to wake him up because we all wanted to rest. We wanted to reprieve. But he was just so much fun. He really kept things in perspective.
And I've been asked by a number of people if there's any way to get a SIG that was a little bit in between the speeds that the Progressive A was going and the B6. So I had spoken with a fellow named Dave Grogan, and we thought about this for a few weeks and came up with the notion of an A19 SIG, which would be the same skill set, the same progressive series, the same philosophy as the classic, but a bit slower. The target was to reach almost the same speed as the A classic, but to take a little bit longer to get there. And the first season, it was a rousing success. There were about 84 people the first season that we ran the program. I was astounded. We put some interesting innovations in there. We added a first aid class. We added a mechanics program. We added a maintenance program and a skills session. And it really has been a wonderful experience. I think over the past 10 years, we started it in 2000. And I believe there's been over almost 1,000 people who've gone through it since then. I still run into folks on the street who say, oh, I took the SIG 8 years ago. It was really, really very nice. This is the first year I was a leader in the SIG without being captain. I retired from being captain this year. Again, a great experience. George Orcarola did a great job as the new captain, so I feel like the baby's in good hands. And it'll continue.
the SIG, I think that I joined maybe the 4th year and led the SIG for many, many years after that, probably almost 15. But at some point, I got a little old and I got a little slow, and I didn't want to ride quite as hard as Christy was riding. And so I decided to just sort of give it up. And I got a call from Ed Fishkin in December. And I said, look, don't ask me because I'm not riding anymore. I'm not riding any more SIGs. I'm not leading any more SIGs, and I don't want to ride that fast. And he says, I have an offer for you that you can't refuse. You know, a line from The Godfather. And I said, there's no offer that you can make me. He says, we're going to start our own SIG, and we're going to go a little slower, and we're going to do a little bit more in-depth training. And that was something that very much appealed to me. And, you know, we were coming down from 21 to 19, but that 2 miles an hour is a significant difference and allowed us to do something very different with the SIG that hadn't been done before. And we were able to do some more in-depth training and not concentrate simply on speed, and it became a great thing. And what happened, despite some people thought that we would actually split the SIG, but what happened is we got a completely different group of 70 people, and so we ended up doubling the membership. And then, you know, that kind of thinking had spread, you know, to an A17 SIG and to a B SIGs and C SIGs, and now there are hundreds of people that enroll for the SIG program. But it was a great thing to be on the, you know, one of the founders of the A19 SIG. And one of my conditions was that I had a ride that I always wanted to do, which was not a fast ride. It was really just a skills ride. It took place in a very separate location. It was usually in a parking lot somewhere under the George Washington Bridge. And I sort of invented that ride and designed a bunch of exercises along with Angel Rivera and Herb Dershowitz, and they still do that today. In fact, I think they do 2 or 3, and it may have even spread to some of the other SIGs, but it was nice to have inaugurated that particular idea that, you know, sort of lives on after you stop riding to that level.